So I got to see Thor Love and Thunder early, and the embargo has lifted on reviews, so I thought I would give you my thoughts about it. But the movie's not officially out yet as the recording of this video, so I'm gonna keep it as spoiler free as possible. If you don't wanna know anything, completely understand, just mute the video and let it play and don't look at it and give me that view anyway. But for everybody else, let's go. Bring the thunder! And the love, I guess. Overall, I really like Thor Love and Thunder. There's a lot of elements in this movie that work really well for me. Now, I will say that Thor Ragnarok works better overall in story and tone, where this one has a little bit of peaks and valleys. For so much going on in this movie, it's short. It's like 2 hours even, I think. And that's interesting to me because there's some parts of the movie that I wish were longer, and then there's other parts of the movie that I wish were shorter or cut out completely. So it's kind of weird. It's like, I kind of want you to be longer, but I also want to take some stuff out. Now, I mean this as a compliment, but this movie is like a big budget Saturday morning cartoon. This is the He-Man movie I've always wanted to see. It's just so colorful and so wild. This movie has some fantastic action sequences. The action scenes especially were a highlight to me because of the cinematography, the way they would do them, the way they would have different styles to them. There's one particular scene that's very visually pleasing to me, and that's because of how they use color, or honestly lack thereof. And there is one slow-mo superpowered fight that is awesome and at the same time ridiculous and hilarious. Like, it was really cool to watch. I was also laughing the entire time because I was like, I can't believe this is happening right now, but it is. Natalie Portman shines in this movie as Jane Foster, aka the Mighty Thor. I loved seeing her in this movie. She was awesome. It's the most developed we've seen of Jane Foster's character since the first film. The way that she uses the cracked Mjolnir is just so cool. And just her emotions of being excited but also nervous about being a true superhero for the first time, that's very enjoyable to watch. And there's more about the character of Jane Foster that's very interesting that we haven't seen in trailers, so I won't talk about it until after the movie comes out, but I'll just say that it was something that made me even more intrigued and invested in this character and what her story was going to be throughout this movie. Chris Hemsworth, he is Thor to me. He still has a comedic edge like he's had in the recent films, but this time we also see a thoughtful side of him as he's trying to figure out his life post-Endgame still. And now having to deal with his ex-girlfriend Jane Foster not only returning, but returning as the Mighty Thor. And of course, he brings the thunder. Can we just give Valkyrie her own movie or Disney Plus series, please? I just love her every time she's on screen. I love Valkyrie so much. I want more of her. Christian Bale. Christian Bale is Gorr the God Butcher. Oh, so good. He is one of the scarier and more sinister villains we've had in the MCU to date. He got some speeches in this movie, boy. He got some moments where he's like, I ain't playing around. But in typical MCU fashion, he's not just a villain just to be a villain. He's got a reason, he's got an ideal, and in his mind, he feels justified. And when you see some of the things that happened to him in this movie prior to being God Butcher, I get it. I get why he did what he did. Jane herself, Thor and Jane, Gorr the God Butcher, just all that kind of stuff was very intriguing that they showed us. So I would have loved them to deep dive even more into that. We do get a good amount of it, but I would have loved more. Because sometimes we get really good with something and then the movie just has to keep moving that we don't get to like sit on it, you know? So when it comes to the action and when it comes to the character interactions, I would have liked to have seen more. The common complaint that we have for a lot of MCU movies is, oh my God, too many jokes. And well, Thor Love and Thunder is probably going to end up in that category. Now, this is not to say that all the jokes are bad or unnecessary. In fact, a lot of them are really good. Like I always say, for me, the best jokes are the ones that come out of character interactions. The way that their dialogue is, the way that they react to something or to someone else, the way they interact with someone in a conversation. That's where I think you get the genuine humor that I love. And when Thor Love and Thunder does that, and it does it a number of times, it's really good. But you can tell sometimes that this movie is trying to recapture the humor of Thor Ragnarok. No, I do not want a super dark, super dreary movie. I'm not coming into Thor Love and Thunder to see the Batman. But this movie has some sad moments, some dramatic moments, some scary moments. When you decide to get into those moments that are going to hit me in the heart, like, let it sit there a little bit. Let me feel that emotion. But some of the jokes are funny. Some of the humor is good. So when it's good, it's good. Oh, if you like 80s rock, especially Guns N' Roses, you're gonna love the soundtrack of this movie. Sweet child of mine. Oh, and if you're expecting a lot of the Guardians of the Galaxy in this movie, I'm just gonna say, don't be late to the movie. If you show up like 15 minutes late, you might be like, Where they at? So when you have that combination of dealing with the events after Endgame, trying to recapture Thor Ragnarok, and also setting up the new story that we have in this movie, this is where I feel you get those peaks and valleys. But once all that kind of calms down, once the main story is at hand, and once they go full blast on that main story, that's when I think this movie is at its strongest. That's when I feel like they really do start taking it more seriously, and that's when I was able to get more invested into it. And that happens relatively early in the film, leading towards the end of the film, so that's why overall I do like this movie. Those first parts maybe could have been smoothed out a little bit more with some editing, or honestly even with some more time, but all the stuff after it I feel like was right on point, and I really enjoyed all of that. Check out the background a lot in this movie. There's some interesting Easter eggs, and of course, stay through all the credits. Particularly one credit where people got wild. So with some nitpicks aside, I found the movie overall to be very entertaining, very fun, very action-packed, and surprisingly heartfelt at times. But I gotta be honest with you, man, like, I feel like I'm being extra critical for this movie in this video because I feel like I have to be. I feel like I have to constantly find and nitpick and say specific things and be like, see, I said something negative about it, so there you go, I'm being fair. Can I just be real with you? With all the criticisms aside, I freaking had a great time. I had so much fun watching this movie. Call me a shill, I don't give a fuck. I enjoy the movie. I definitely have a wonderful time. I definitely want to see it again. If you just want to sit back and enjoy the ride, there's definitely a lot in this ride to enjoy. Overall, I like the ride.